Welcome to this guide, which aims to explain how you can go about trying to get full marks on the 2012 Natural Hazards paper, which is the one you've taken as your end of unit test. Now, before we go any further, it's worth just thinking about how best to use this video. First of all, if you're listening in class, we strongly recommend use headphones so you don't distract yourself or others. When you're listening to this, don't watch the whole thing, go through it question by question. When you've finished a question, pause the video, have a go at looking at what you've written, try and improve it. Even if you've got full marks, have a look and see what else you could have included to get full marks, or even other things that have been useful to do. Make sure you've got your purple pen with you, and I want you to do two things. Where you haven't got full marks, make sure you mark on what you needed to do to add on to that to make sure it's full marks. But the other thing you should be looking for are things that are wrong or things that are not getting you any marks whatsoever. And where you've written something which isn't actually that useful, delete it. Get into the habit of writing the minimum amount you need to get the maximum number of marks. And if at any point you're not sure about that, then one of the great things about a video is you can stop, go back and listen again. So, without further ado, let's get started. Now the first question is a very typical GCSE type distribution question. It's asking you, if you have a look, to look at the map. It's saying, can you state 3 features of distribution of earthquakes shown in figure 8a? Okay, well, as soon as you see a question that says distribution, it's asking you to describe where things are. So the first thing I would do is pretty much in this order, is first of all, have a look and see what the title is. Well, location of deadliest earthquakes, nice and easy. Secondly, have a look at the plate at the key. What you'll see here is that it mentions 2 things, plate boundaries and locations of earthquakes. The fact that the key suggests it's only those 2 things really is hinting that they're the things you should be using in your answer. The other thing you can see is that actually it's named the different plates. So immediately what we've done is we've picked out the sort of things that they're going to be expecting us to actually mention. The only other thing on the map that we can see is it's got the sea in blue and the land in green. That may sound stupid, but we'll come to that later. Once you've actually unpicked the key and you've looked at what's on the map, the next thing I would always advise is literally run your finger over where the earthquakes are. In this case, you'll see there's a clump over here. There's 4 or 5 in fact over here, and then there's 1 there and there's 1 there. Now basically that's what you need to do. You need to say where they are. So if you start off by describing over here, you can start off by talking about, well, there's 4 located next to the Iranian plate and the Indo-Australian plate. You could talk about how there's 4 located in this area here between the Indo-Australian plate and the Eurasian plate. You could talk about the Caribbean plate having 1, or the South American plate having 1. You could talk about the fact that all of them appear to be on land. But there's one other thing which is important to remember. Come back to our key. The reason why the key is so useful is that's telling us what the examiners are expecting. Well, we know we've got to describe the location of earthquakes, so why have they put on the plate boundaries? And the simple reason is, if you look at where the plate boundaries are, you'll see that's where the earthquakes are. So clearly we need to make sure that we've got something that says that the earthquakes occur on or near the plate boundary. So let's have a look at the answers and let's see what we're looking for. So the answers, I'll have a quick look. First of all, to get full marks you have to mention on or near to plate margins. But then if you look at the others, you'll see that what we're predicting. Clustered in the Middle East, clustered in Southeast Asia, isolated earthquake in Central America and South America, located in LEDCs, which is interesting. Most coastal, most are in Asia, and notice you can get 2 marks for locating specific plate boundaries. A couple of things to look for, which is what you won't get marks for, is not the equator. Interestingly, not regions where there are no earthquakes. Now, often I'd advise you to actually say where they were, but that should always be a last resort. Clustered, isolated edge of countries. How can you talk about countries when there's no country boundaries on there? And notice it must refer to plate boundaries to score 3 marks. Fairly simple question as long as you've got the technique right. So if you haven't got 3 marks here, stop the video, have a go, make sure you've got 3. Okay, so now we come on to question B. So if we have a look at question B, we can look first of all at the command word. And the command word is saying suggest. Suggest means give some reasons. They don't have to be correct, but they have to be sensible. So let's have a look at the question again. Suggest why some earthquakes and LEDCs can cause many deaths. Now, there's 2 ways of approaching this. You could think about it in terms of earthquakes just in general, or you could think about your LEDC case study, probably Haiti, and think about why so many people died there. Either way is a good way of approaching it. Have a look at what the exam board's saying, and in fact, you'll notice with this sort of question, there's a whole host of things. Now, the way this will be marked is that every reason you give is worth 1 mark. Every reason, explanation of that, the development the exam board calls it, will get you another mark. So let's have a look through the reasons that they've got. So first of all, poor conditions of buildings will get you 1 mark. If you then go on and explain that that means they're more likely to collapse and more people like to die inside of them, you get your 2nd. You might talk about a lack of emergency services, okay, which in turn means that people can't be rescued. So again, 1 mark for the emergency services, or lack of, 1 mark for why it does. And we can just go through these. Lack of planning, because the government hasn't got the capacity. High population density, you might talk about slums. Physical characteristics, for example, steep slopes might cause landslides. You might even talk about deforestation on those slopes, increasing the risk. They're the sort of, you might call vulnerabilities, the reasons why LEDCs are likely to have more deaths than MEDCs. But the question doesn't stop you talking about other factors. The power of the earthquake. If you talk about the magnitude of the earthquake, well, clearly, it doesn't matter if it's an MEDC or an LEDC, a more powerful earthquake is going to kill more people. It might talk about prediction or prevention. You might also want to think about secondary effects. Now again, if you think about Haiti, one of the biggest killers in Haiti was not just the earthquake, but the cholera that came after. So you could talk about how in countries like Haiti, cholera linked to poor sanitation, poor healthcare, things like that, can also cause it. Other things, just looking down here, okay, you can see no emergency food supplies, leading to starvation and malnourishment, poor healthcare, reliance on foreign aid and the time it takes, and you could even talk about why that takes so long. For example, again in Haiti, ports were destroyed, destruction of roads, airways, etc., making it difficult to pass. So 2 ways of approaching this. 4 reasons, each one worth a point. 2 or 3 reasons, each developed, the development worth the point. So again, stop the video now if you haven't got 4 marks on this. In particular, have a look for sections where you've written a lot and not got any marks, and have a go and make sure you've got 4 marks. Okay, so when you've done that, now have a go at question 2. If we look at question 2, again, we notice it's suggest, which means that it doesn't have to be perfect, it's got to be sensible. 2 measurements other than the number of deaths which can be used to compare the impact of earthquakes. Now, importantly here, it's after the word impact. So it's not going to be interested in the strength or the magnitude of the earthquake. And actually, that was one of the most common mistakes here. Now, just think about this. One of the most powerful earthquakes in the world happened in Alaska, didn't kill a single person. No one lived there. So the impact was really small. Something like the Haiti earthquake wasn't a massive earthquake, but killed large numbers of people. So there's a difference here between an earthquake that has an impact and a high magnitude. So that's not what we're after. In fact, what we're after is something that can be measured with a unit of measurement. So anything the earthquake destroys that can be measured, that's the answer. For example, the number of buildings destroyed. It could be the area that's affected. It could be the number of people who are homeless. It could be the number of people who lose their jobs. It could be the total cost. It could be the time it takes to repair. But anything that could be measured gets you a mark as long as it's linked to the impact. And this is a very classic question where people are putting the wrong answer because they're not reading the question thoroughly. So make sure in the exam you don't do that. Again, stop the video if you haven't got this through. Make sure you've got 2 reasons. And if you haven't got 2, think carefully about why you didn't. Now, when we come on to question D, what we see is that the question has become an explain question. So if we have a look, what we can see here is it says explain two problems faced by people after an earthquake. So it's secondary effects it's really after. And then it says develop your ideas. Now it's worth thinking then what the examiner's after. What that means is that for one reason, what they call an explanation, you'll get 1 mark. And then if you explain why that's bad, that's what they call their development, you get the 2nd mark. So we do need something which goes along the structure of, causes this problem, which is a problem because. So, what sort of things? We'll have a look at some of the photos here for suggestions. This is what Port-au-Prince looked like after the Haiti earthquake. And if you have a look here, you've obviously got large numbers, thousands of people who are homeless. Well, homelessness is your problem. That'll get you 1 mark. If you can then explain why that's so bad, okay, you can get the 2nd mark. And you can see here, people homeless might have to live in temporary shelters. They're at greater risk of hypothermia, but also they'll lack sanitation, more likely to develop cholera, etc., etc. And you can see, in fact, for example, some of the sanitation and rubbish conditions over here are pretty poor. You might also want to think about those health issues. So again, hospitals have been destroyed. People can't then get treatment for secondary diseases such as cholera. It might well be that you could have a think about what's going on over here. You can see the traffic jams that have been caused because roads and bridges have been destroyed. Traffic jams means people can't get home to loved ones. It means that people can't get to work. It means factories can't operate because goods can't come in. All of these sort of things. Factories have to shut, which means that people lose their jobs and forced to move. Again, okay, 1 mark for the problem, 1 mark for developing it. You might want to think about the infrastructure. One of the common things that gets broken in an earthquake are gas pipes, water pipes, electricity cables. Well, broken gas pipes may mean you've got no heating, nothing to cook with. Might also spark off fires. No electricity. Okay, again, causes a problem. No lights. Everyday things can't work. You might also want to think about aftershocks, for example. So it's pretty bad there's been an earthquake, many buildings have been destroyed, but small aftershocks afterwards can cause buildings to collapse that haven't already fallen over. So very much it's a question of technique here. Okay, you'll probably be able to think of lots of secondary effects, but you've got to get into the habit of saying this is the problem, and then saying it's a problem because. Okay, this sort of so what chain. So what people are homeless, so what bridges are broken, so what there's a lack of clean water. And if you ask yourself that question, you can train yourself to get 4 marks on this one. Okay, now we come on to E. And E is the final of the short questions. And again, a slightly different command word. This time, what we've got here is we've got describe. And it's just not describe a pattern, it's a describe ways of predicting. So what they want you to do is name something, that'll get you a mark. And you can see down here what the examiner's advice is. And then, if you develop that, you get another mark. So just like the previous 4 mark question we were talking about, 1 mark for the reason, 1 mark for developing. You can get 4 marks just for naming 4 different techniques, or you get 1 mark for naming, 1 mark for explaining in detail. And you can see here a couple of examples. One of the most common ones that you guys came up with was animal behaviour. 1 mark for animal behaviour. If you want to get the 2nd mark, then you need to be able to explain. So, for example, the classic example is from China, where a city was actually evacuated because of animal behaviour. In fact, the only times an earthquake successfully been predicted, snakes, which normally lived in the ground, refused to actually go in the ground, and that enabled the geologists to actually predict an earthquake. Another common method is what's called seismic gap analysis, and you can see one of the most famous examples of it here. This is the San Andreas fault, and you can see areas here where there's loads of earthquakes. And actually, that's not a bad sign. That means that before any stress can build up, there is actually an earthquake. But you can actually see a couple of things. There's hardly any earthquakes here, there's hardly any earthquakes here, and there were hardly any earthquakes here. Well, this is where one of the largest earthquakes in California in the last 30 years happened, called the Loma Prieta one, and the Northridge earthquake happened over here, just afterwards, and that's one of the case studies that you may well have looked at. So you can see that where there hasn't been earthquakes for a large period of time, you're far more likely to get a more powerful one. This is called seismic gap analysis, and it's one of the most effective ways of predicting where large earthquakes will happen. There are, if you have a look over on the other side, lots of other ways. You can actually monitor the movement along faults. You do that using satellites, lasers, GPS, anything that basically allows you to measure the movement of plates. And again, if there is movement, it's probably a good sign. It's when there isn't movement and the plates become locked that's a problem. You've got seismic gap theory, we've just discussed that. You can look at the build-up of radon gas. The idea here is that as the rocks push against each other, small cracks in the rocks are formed, and that releases gas to escape. You could look at the strain in the rock. You can actually put an instrument in the ground that measures the compression. That again gives you an idea. You can monitor water levels in wells. The logic here is that as the rocks get squashed, water may rise or sink depending on what's happening in the rocks. If there's a sudden change, it might suggest there's an earthquake. Again, we can measure stress in rocks, we've talked about that. Deformation in rocks, that just simply means how crushed they are. Well, look for yourself. You can see there's a whole number of them, but most of them are covered. It's unlikely to be asked for more than 2, say 4 at most, 2 well-developed ones. So personally, I'd learn the animal behaviour and the seismic gap one, and just make sure I'm aware of some of those. Okay, now we finally come on to the 12-mark question at the end. Now we cheated slightly here and made it into a climatic hazard, which could be either MEDC or LEDC. In the exam, it's far more likely, particularly in the higher tier, to say MEDC or LEDC. And one word of warning is that there are only 4 case studies in the natural hazards unit. They will ask difficult questions. Although there's less, you have to be very well prepared for these. And this is quite a good example of this. So the 3 things you need to know are causes, effects and management. You'll only get tested on 2, but they can be really tricky. And if you have a look, you can see here that what they've done is they've talked about the natural processes. One of the things many people did here was talk about human processes. So they talked about deforestation or over-extraction of water. And while that's very true, it's not helping you answer the question. Now, about half of you did Australia, half of you did Kenya. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Australia first and then go on to Kenya. If you did Kenya, it's probably still worth listening to this, because in the exam you may well be asked to answer the question on Australia, and vice versa. If you've done Australia, it's worth listening to the Kenya bit. Now, in a video like this, I don't have time to go into a massive amount of detail, so I'm just going to talk about the sort of things I think you should include, and your job is to use this video and your notes to make sure you've got a really good answer. Now, one of the things that's worth mentioning here is this rule of 3. If you can, you want to give 3 reasons. And remember, there's 2 sections to it. In this one, it's explain the natural processes causing a hazard. And the second part is describe its impact on people. If you can give 3 causes, processes if you like, and 3 impacts, you're doing brilliantly. And in fact, the feedback from examiners is that the best answers did that. So, Australia and the big dry, well, what's the cause? Well, with any drought, the cause is going to be a long period of high pressure. So there's high pressure, air is sinking, there's no rain, there's no clouds, which means it's going to be a long period of dry weather, hence you get a drought. Now, both of our droughts are linked to what's called the El Niño cycle. El Niño basically is a weather system that comes across the whole of the Pacific, but affects pretty much the weather around the world. Now, for the first one, the Australian one, Australia gets the drought during El Niño. So, the high pressure here is a direct cause of El Niño. If you're able to mention this and explain it's a weather system across the Pacific and it leads to high pressure over Australia, you're really doing well. This is A-grade stuff. Finally, the other problem is that you get a drought not just because it doesn't rain, but because what water is on the land evaporates. And with no cloud and subtropical temperatures in Australia, you're going to get huge rates of evaporation. So that's our three, if you like, reasons for it. So, now we've looked at the reasons for it, let's have a look at the effects. Now, in terms of effects, it's well worth making sure you know at least three in detail. If you're really going for the A and the A star, then if you can mention more, that's brilliant. But 3 is the magic number, remember. So with Australia, well, one of the things about Australia is that for an MEDC, it's got a huge amount of farming and no water, massive reductions in the amount of food, particularly for cattle farmers, catastrophic. Huge numbers of cattle dying, many having to be sold for a fraction of their worth. The pressure that put farmers on. Remember, this drought lasted for years. 2006 to 2009, some say it goes on to 2010. Over that period of time, many farmers got no money whatsoever. Massive increases in debt. That's unfortunately led to many farmers taking their own lives. In addition to farmer suicides, which the exact number is quite hard to pin down, bushfires linked to the hot conditions killed over 180 people. In all urban areas, massive restrictions in place. Water meters common, hose pipe bans, limits on the length of time you can have a shower, for example. Real issues in terms of water consumption. And the overall estimate is somewhere in the region of Australian dollars, but 7 billion Australian dollars, okay, which is a massive cost. Now, instead of the Australian drought, you could also have chosen your Kenya drought here. So let's have a look at Kenya 2009. Now what you'll see is that immediately in terms of the cause, exactly the same as Australia, a long period of high pressure. This time though, the high pressure here is caused not by El Nino, but by El Nino's sister, La Nina, translates as little girl. And what this does is that this causes the failure of the rainy seasons. And over 2 years, 2008-2009, both rainy seasons failed, meant that 75% of Kenya had less than half of the normal rain. Now remember, we're talking about subtropical Africa here. So again, high pressure, few clouds, very hot conditions, exceptionally high evaporation rates. Now again, remember the question is asking for natural processes. So a lot of you talked about over-extraction, deforestation, use of water from rivers for the flower industry. And again, they're all perfectly valid causes, but they're not natural processes. So it's really important that you've read your question, you've tailored your answer to the question. That's how you're going to get your A. So it's really important you do that. Now, just like in Australia, we need to look at the effects as well. And we'd probably recommend a minimum of 3 effects, but again, particularly in a describing bit, the more the merrier. You also want to make sure you've got place-specific information, so specific numbers will always impress the examiner. So try and remember at least 1 or 2 place-specific pieces of information per a case study. Okay, well, just like in Australia, farming is absolutely key for Kenya, and we see 19 million people suffering food shortages. Now, it doesn't mean they're starving, but unfortunately for some, it does. So during this drought, there's a 15% increase in the number of people who are malnourished. Now, unfortunately, very often, that's women, children, babies. The consequence of that is a massive increase in infant and child mortality, and it's often the weakest who will be the worst affected. There's also wider impacts. Okay, so for example, Kenya gets much of its electricity from hydroelectric power, HEP. When the rivers run dry, there's no electricity, so many towns go without electricity. In the markets, because of the scarcity of food, 130% increases in food. That means that many people can't actually afford to buy food, and there becomes aid dependency and people become dependent on food aid. And on an environmental level, because many farmers have no source of food, many cattle have died or they've had to sell them to the government or whatever, people are simply starving, so therefore they go and hunt. Now, if you can't hunt cattle, the next best thing are basically wild game. Things like elephants, buffalo, bison, whatever, they're hunted, and a large number of quite rare endangered animals were killed primarily for meat. That has a knock-on impact then on the tourist trade, which is another major earner of income, and that's going to create real economic problems. So again, with this one, make sure you got your facts right, make sure you covered both parts, and make sure you've got that place-specific information. And if you have done, you should be fine. So I hope this video has been useful. Make sure now you've gone through, you've used your purple pen, and hopefully by the time you finish, you should have the perfect answer. So good luck with that, and I hope this has been of help.